from the office one day when he came across a Little League baseball game. And he decides to sit and watch this game for a while, and after a bit he taps on the shoulder of one of the Little League kids, and he asks what the score was. And the little boy turns around and says, "It's 14-0, we're losing." Jack Canfield says, "Well, you don't look very discouraged." And the little boy turns around and says, "Why be discouraged? We haven't been up to bat yet." Now that's a story of hope. Let me share with you another story. A story about two identical twins. On the outside, they looked exactly alike, but on the inside, personality-wise, they were complete opposites. One was an eternal optimist. He saw good in everything and everybody. The other was an eternal pessimist. He did not see good in anything. Well, his parents were a bit concerned that their kids were on two polar opposites, so they decided to do a little experiment to kind of balance out their personalities. It was Christmas. And so they decided that the gifts that they were going to give them to hopefully see if this would kind of balance out those personalities. So the boy who was the eternal optimist, they gave a bag of straw. And the eternal pessimist, they gave a brand new bicycle. They put their names on it. Christmas came, Christmas morning, the two boys, they rush down, they open up their presents. The eternal pessimist sees the bicycle, he says, "A bicycle? Don't they know it's cold outside? And by the way, I'll probably fall and break something. I can't believe I got this lousy bicycle." The eternal optimist sees this bag of straw. He begins to think for a bit. Then he runs around the living room. He runs outside. He begins to run all over the house. And then his brother and his parents are looking at him and they're saying, "What is going on?" And the eternal optimist twin, he says, "I saw this bag of straw and I just knew there was a pony here somewhere, but I can't seem to find him." There it is. Indescribable, unbelievable, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious hope. If there's one thing I want to get across tonight, it is that word of hope. Now, it could be the hope of the optimist. There is a pony around here somewhere. It could be the hope of the attitude, we just haven't been up to bat yet. But the subject of hope that I want to get across to you tonight goes beyond optimism, goes beyond attitude. It is hope found when all else seems hopeless. It is hope that is seen when everything seems dark. It is hope realized when all else seems lost. Dr. Gardner Taylor is a preacher. He tells the story of the first time that he was preaching. He was during the Depression, he was assigned to this rural black church in Louisiana, and the electricity was just coming to this part of Louisiana, and there was one light bulb that came down in the sanctuary, illuminated the whole church. Dr. Gardner says that he was just preaching away when all of a sudden the electricity goes out and the whole church is dark. Begins to kind of stumble around, and he doesn't know quite what to say, being young and all, until finally one of the deacons in the back of the church says, "Preach on, preacher, we can still see Jesus in the dark." That's the kind of hope that I want to get across to you tonight. And to get there, we're going to be talking about these words, what if? I mean, think about those words, what if? They are magical. They are hopeful. They describe a beautiful place. It might be like the kids' song. Now sing this along with me if you know this song. My kids loved it. In the Big Rock Candy Mountain, you never change your socks. And the little streams of apple juice come a-bumbling down the rocks. There's no such thing as homework. It's your birthday all the time. You can stay up late and your folks don't care. You can come to lunch in your underwear in the Big Rock Candy Mountain. I'll tell you, my kids still love that song. A few years ago, we went down to Lincoln. We popped in the tape. We sang that song. They love the part of the underwear. I don't know why, but they really get into that. That idea of what if. Now, I want to address the adults here because it may not be candy. In fact, Ray Romano, a comedian, actually had this idea in one of his monologues one time. He says, when adults start dreaming about candy, we start thinking about cavities. And that goes to the dentist, and that goes to a dental bill. So it might not be about candy. But maybe we think about other things, the what if. We played around with this when I was in college. In my history classes, we used to talk about the idea of what if Hitler had died before World War II? What if the British had won the Revolutionary War? Now, we could spend all day on this question of what if. What if we could change one thing about ourselves? What if there was something different in our lives? What if we could go back to that one event and just change that one event? So I think maybe we could spend all day on this what if idea. So we're going to narrow our focus here. I've got some show and share items here. This is a telescope. My dad got me this telescope. He knows that I love science fiction. And I love someday to be flying into stars. And I have used this telescope to look at the stars. I have seen the moons around Jupiter. I've looked at the rings around Saturn. It's a great thing to kind of narrow in on something right in the telescope. And sometimes when I look in the telescope, I kind of imagine, wonder what it would be like if someone on one of those distant places is looking right back at the earth. What do you think they would see? If they looked at us, I have imagined they would probably see a lot of darkness. You know, the news out of Leypoldt, Syria is really disturbing. Children are dying in the streets. Innocents are gunned down just trying to reach safety. There's no working hospital, and then you hear about individuals that are becoming refugees, and then they're dying in the seas. What else do you think someone might see if they're looking at us? I think they'd see a lot of anger and hate. You know, this election did nothing to heal the divisions in this country. I know of family members that have refused to talk to each other. We have seen the protests. There's news on the TV. It is not good. There's a lot of anger. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anxiety that nobody is going to get along. What else do you think someone might see if they're looking in a telescope? I think they'd see a lot of doubt and discouragement. The debt continues to go up for so many people. Bills are piling up, and we haven't received those bills for Christmas yet. Our health is getting worse, and health insurance isn't making it any easier. The church is getting older and grayer. People are not believing and not practicing and not participating like they used to. Yet telescopes, are great at seeing something far away. And if you've ever spent any time looking in a telescope, you know that the focus is so narrow that you kind of miss some things. I mean, if you've ever looked and you found an object such as Mars or a certain star, and you run in the house and say, hey, come on out and take a look at this. And they come out and they notice, the stars have moved. The earth has rotated. And it takes you another 15 minutes to find something. That's why scientists have never seen aliens. They're too focused in one little area. When I look at our world, what do we see? If we see darkness, guess what? We're going to find it. If we see hate and anger, it's going to be there. If we have our doubts and discouragements, yes, those sights are going to catch our attention. But what if? What if we see something through a broader lens? I brought some binoculars. Binoculars are good if you want to see some things at short distance. My dad had a pair of binoculars just like this. We used to go to Nebraska games together. We used to look at the players down on the floor, or on the stadium. They're also great for bird watching. In fact, it kind of reminds me of a story. A conservation agent was driving through the countryside, and he comes across these trees that have fallen down. So he kind of goes up to check on what's going on. He notices there's this nest, and there's some eggs in there, and they're all broken except for one. It's an eagle's nest. And he's thinking to himself, that mom's not going to come back and take care of this eagle. And he remembers that there was a farm that he drove by, and so he decides to go back to that farmer, and he tells the farmer the story of finding this eagle's nest, and he says, would you be willing to take this eagle? And the farmer takes the eagle and he puts it into a chicken coop. And he says, if the eagle is going to survive, that's probably the best chance he has. Conservation agent drives away, said he's going to be back in a couple months. Well, after he comes and checks in, farmer says, it's an eagle, but he thinks he's a chicken. I tell it to fly, and it just walks around like a chicken. The agent, he gets this idea. So he goes out and he gets a rabbit, and maybe this eagle just kind of needs to understand its natural instinct. And so this eagle, all it's doing is just eating chicken feed. And so he puts the rabbit right in front of the eagle and kind of coaxes the eagle a bit. And just then the eagle begins to stalk it and sees that rabbit. And he jumps on that rabbit and starts tearing it to bits. But then he begins to walk around and walk like a chicken and eating chicken feed. And the farmer says, I told you. He thinks he's a chicken. Now the agent, he's not undeterred. He says it's probably his environment. So he takes this eagle out to a beautiful valley. So the eagle can see all the things and kind of feel the rush of the wind underneath its wings and kind of hear the chirps of those poor little defenseless animals that eagle is probably going to be going after. And then the agent, he has the eagle facing the sun, and he begins to say, Thou art an eagle. I return you to your rightful place. Spread your wings and fly. And the eagle spreads its wings, feels the wind of rush underneath the wings, and flies up, and then comes back down and starts walking like a chicken. And the farmer who went with him says, I told you, it's an eagle, but he thinks he's a chicken. Then the eagle hears a sound. And it's a few other eagles already up in the sky. And with that, he flies out and he joins his rightful place in the sky. Now, we get in the mindset that life is always going to be this way. We will always have war. There's nothing we can do about the events halfway around the world. The poor will always be with us. We will always have a car payment. There will always be disagreements between Democrats and Republicans. We will never change their minds. The younger generation, and whatever generation you're part of, it's always the younger generation, is always lazier than you. And eagles always think they're chickens. It's just the way it is. But what if we turn these binoculars onto Christmas? What do you think we'd see? Well, it's all about the shopping, obligations, and busyness. And then we gather here and we realize that we're exhausted. We are spent. There's nothing left financially for an extra gift. There is no energy left for Jesus. There is nothing spiritually to get into the story of Jesus' birth. Because all we see is darkness. And the future looks bleak. And how we're never going to get it back. And how it's never going to be the way things used to be. But maybe our focus still is just a little too narrow. What if I could take these glasses here and focus on the bigger picture? What if these glasses allow me to focus on the Christmas story of the birth of Jesus? What if these glasses allow me to enter into the story and see something different? I want to take you on something. I want to describe a world that Jesus was born into. It was a frightening time. Rome was in charge and nobody messed with Rome. Garrisons of troops were stationed here and there, and they were well trained and they were well equipped and they were well paid, and nobody messes with a well paid military. And Rome didn't like to be messed with. Now, there was some freedom in the Roman Empire, but that freedom was only there if you agreed to worship the emperor. And you could speak out in the Roman Empire if you were part of the ruling class. And you could raise your own crops in the Roman Empire, but as long as you don't mind paying 50 to 75% taxes to the government. But if you were poor, and you were powerless, and you believed only in worshiping God and nothing else, it was a dark time. If you believed that Roman oppression was unjust, that's okay. But there's this cross here that was used as a death penalty. If you believed that Roman troops shouldn't be in the land, that was okay. But you just might get a sword through your belly. This is the world that Jesus was born into. Hope was fleeting. The people were powerless. And darkness reigned all around. Let me share with you a scripture that meant a lot to the people of that day. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who lived in a land of deep darkness, on them light has shined. You have multiplied the nations. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as people exult when dividing plunder. For the yoke of their burden and the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For all the boots of the trampling warriors and all the garments rolled in blood shall be burned as fuel for the fire. For a child has been born for us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His authority shall grow continually, and there shall be endless peace for the throne of David and his kingdom. He will establish and uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time onward and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this. You know, one of the great things about darkness is that the slightest light can penetrate it. One of the greatest things about Christmas is that something so simple can change the world. Even a baby can make a difference. Think about this. What if? What if this event so many years ago brought hope? What if this event ended darkness? What if this event ended hatred and divisions in the world? What if this event can make the future seem possible? You see, when you came in these doors here tonight, you were already wearing one of these lenses right here. Because 2,000 years ago, the question, what if, was already answered. Christmas did change the world. The Roman Empire is no more. It went from worshiping emperors to being actually the leader of the Christian world. The cross became a symbol of the death penalty to a sign of courage. The Christmas event so many years ago brought hope and change to so many people. This event had people feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, taking care of the sick, visiting those in prison, and of course providing water to those that are thirsty. What if Christmas did change the world? Can it still change the world? Last Sunday, we concluded our lessons on Advent Conspiracy. 4 simple lessons that changed how culture treats Christmas. 4 simple lessons. Worship fully. That one's pretty simple. The reason for the season is Jesus. It's the foundation of everything that we do. Spend less. That one was a little bit tougher, because it strikes at our participation in the shopping and the buying of the decorations and the spending money on a celebration that we forgot why we're doing it. Give more. It's a simple idea. You take your Christmas budget, you just reduce it one gift, and that amount you give it to a clean water project. In fact, tonight's offering is going to an organization in Africa that we are building wells for. And then love all. That one's pretty easy. You love not just your neighbor down the street, but the poor across the city, and those in your school and in your workplace that you know are on the margins of society. You see, we made what if not a question, but a reality. We conspired not just to tell the story, but to live it. We decided that Christmas did change the world, and now it must change us. Tell you something interesting that happened to me today. This has been my tradition as long as I've been a pastor. I usually spend all day in the church on Christmas Eve, kind of getting ready for things. working on the message, kind of making sure the church is fine. And I found that Christmas Eve is also a busy day for people to come into the church. People are coming in, they're checking out the decorations, they're looking to see how things are. They're dropping off gifts, they're saying their greetings, and today was no different. But today was a little bit unique. There was a woman that came into the church today, and I didn't recognize her. And she was wearing these clothes that looked like that, even though it was a nice day, I assumed it was everything that she owned. And then she had this bag with her, and I looked at this bag, and it was well worn, and I thought to myself, oh my gosh, that is all of her worldly possessions. And when I saw her, I was getting ready to tell her that, the person that handles the gas vouchers is not here today. Could she come back on Monday? And I was getting ready to tell her that we did have some canned goods that I could provide her for a meal. And I was just getting ready to open my mouth when she said, I don't need anything. I just want to share with you 2 gifts. I thought, okay, this is kind of unique. And at this time, I'll be honest with you, I really didn't have time to visit with her. But I thought, okay, this is the reason for the season, so I better live it. So, okay, I invited her into the office and sat down and visited with her. And I thought, okay, what are the gifts? And she said to me, I've got a story to share with you. And she talked about this village a long time ago, that in the center of this village, they had a table. And on this table was a loaf of bread. But nobody touched that loaf of bread. And she said that there was a ritual that kind of existed in this village, that whenever a little boy or a little girl would turn about 14, they would be brought to the center of the village, and an elder would stand behind the table, and they would ask the question, do you wish to take the loaf? And then the little boy and the little girl, they would not take it. Oh, she also told me one other thing about this loaf of bread. Is that for generations it was told that if you touched the loaf of bread, you would either go into slavery, or you would disappear, or you would die on the spot. So when those elders would ask that question, you think those little boys and little girls would touch that loaf of bread? No. They would be asked 3 times, do you wish to take the loaf of bread? And each time, that little boy or that little girl, they would say no. And this would go on for generation after generation. And then this woman said to me, she says, then one day there was a young man. He just turned 14, and he was brought to the center of the village for this ritual, and was brought to the center where the table was, and was asked the question, do you wish to take the loaf of bread? And the little boy said yes. And everyone was shocked. No one had ever said yes before. And the elder kind of asked it again, do you want to take this loaf of bread? And the boy said yes, and the elder says, but you might go into slavery, you might disappear, you might die on the spot. And the little boy said, that's okay, I want to take the loaf of bread. Now you might imagine by this time I'm on the edge of my seat. Okay, this is a really interesting story. And then she says that he touches the loaf of bread. Nothing happens to him. But everyone else kind of changes around this boy. This boy becomes kind of a servant to this village, and he's doing all kinds of good, and every time that someone asks him to do something, he does it. And there was all kind of these changes that were going on. Before, the poor were treated with disdain. They were seen as someone that was lazy, and the boy said that we should treat him with compassion. Before, the poor or those that were sick were told to just be left alone, and the boy said, no, we should do something about this. Before the boy touched that bread, those that were hungry and those that were thirsty were considered lazy. And the boy, he actually fed them, and he actually gave them water. And now at this point, I'll be honest with you, I kind of looked at the woman and I said, okay, this story didn't really happen, did it? This is too good to be true. And she looked at me and she says, yeah, it's too good to be true. Because there was so much change that was taking place in that village that they killed her. And just then, someone came to my door and needed some help setting up something here in the sanctuary. I thought, no! I need to know how this story ends. No, I can't do this. And so I said to this woman, I said, can you just wait right here? I got to take care of this attention, and I'll be right back because I know how the story is going to, I need to know how the story ends. This will make a great sermon illustration, but I can't tell it if I don't know how the story ends. So I went down to the sanctuary, and I tried to be as quick but as pastoral as I could because I wanted to get back to the woman. And I went back to the woman into my office, and she was gone. And I looked all over the church, and I couldn't find her. I went outside, and she was nowhere to be found. So I came back to the office, and I noticed that her bag was there. And I thought, oh my gosh, these are all of her worldly possessions. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't usually go through someone's things, but I want to know, okay, maybe this bag had her name in it, maybe it had a phone number, maybe it had an address, something that would identify herself. And so I kind of pulled out the bag. In fact, I brought it here with me. And I found my second gift. You know, when Jesus said and broke the bread, he said, we're not more than just telling the story. We're living. When we feed the hungry, when we clothe the naked, when we go and visit those that are in prison, when we go and take care of those that are thirsty, we are actually living the story. And then when Jesus came to the supper that night and found this cup, and we tell the story of the Nativity, we realize that one of the things that we should do is not just tell the story, but actually live it. When Jesus says that we are forgiven, we should be forgiving each other. Actually living the story. This was the gift that was led to me. And now I share it with you. I'm going to ask the ushers and those that participate in communion to please come forward. Tonight, we're going to partake in communion. And how this works in the United Methodist Church, we have what is referred to an open communion table. As I shared with you, you came in these doors with certain lenses on your eyes, realizing that this